From the News Channel 5 Network, this is OpenLine.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to OpenLine. Glad you're with us tonight. Talking about an issue that impacts so many people. We are talking about legal aid that is available for renters. A lot of people are going through evictions, have all kinds of problems with landlords, especially low-income renters. And so we're talking about a program. It's called the Eviction Right to Counsel program. And I'm happy to have with us DarKenya Waller, Executive Director of the Legal Aid Society. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. So, this is a new program, right?
It is.
The Eviction Right to Counsel program.
Yes.
We all know about the Legal Aid Society, but tell us about this program. What is the Eviction Right to Counsel program?
Yeah. Well, when I say it's new, I do want to clarify. It is an expansion for sure of the work that we've been attempting to do in all of Davidson County with 2 attorneys. And as you can imagine, it's challenging. But to your specific question relative to what is the Eviction Right to Counsel, it is a pilot project of the Metro Council and Metro Nashville Davidson County government that is being implemented through the Legal Aid Society in partnership with Conexion Americas to offer free civil legal services to persons who cannot afford an attorney and are facing eviction. Oftentimes people think that, well, I thought you get a lawyer if you can't afford one. I mean, isn't that how it works? I've heard the Miranda rights, right? That's what they say. But what people often don't realize is when that happens, typically, whether it's CSI or Law and Order, you see somebody's head being ducked into the back of a police car, and they get their Miranda rights. Well, that is absolutely the case if you are being charged with a crime. If you're facing jail time, facing an arrest, yes, you have a constitutional right to an attorney. Not the case if you're being evicted. If you're being evicted, you have zero right to an attorney if you can't afford one. If you can afford one, absolutely. If you cannot, you are expected to go into court and to navigate a legal system that was created by lawyers for lawyers. Good luck.
Right. That would be really hard. Yeah. And so, what are you seeing? I mean, are a lot of the evictions, that means people that are being evicted, oftentimes they show up in court, they don't have an attorney. Are a lot of people being evicted when they should not be evicted? If they had an attorney, there would be a different outcome?
Oftentimes that's the case. Not every time, for sure. And where there's a situation where there is a clear violation of the lease, then that is a situation where we will offer advice, where we will counsel the person in terms of what their next step should be, what their next move should be, how they could potentially preserve their eviction history, which is very important, or their finances, how we can help them preserve that. In those scenarios, that's where we give advice. But there are other scenarios where it would be more than helpful to have someone who could speak on behalf of you, articulate your points, and show the court, if necessary, what it is that you need. Whether it's a situation where a lease is being terminated prematurely. It's not time for the lease to terminate. You still have a lease agreement for another 6 months, but somehow you're being evicted for something that you're not aware of. Where the conditions in the home, or in the apartment, whatever the living space is, are not conducive. They're not habitable. Those situations, and others that do come along. So where we're talking about an imbalance of power between a tenant unrepresented coming in and trying to represent themselves, that's hopefully where we will be in that space.
We get a lot of calls here at the station with those same things. People are desperate, they don't know where to turn, the imbalance of power. What is the thing you get called for most that goes least represented? Would it be being evicted early, or would it be the bad conditions in a rental property? What would you say?
It's a little bit of all of the above. Most people, when they receive an eviction notice, honestly, panic is the first thing, and why wouldn't it be? I mean, it shakes up your entire sense of stability when you get that notice. And sometimes it's just understanding what's happening. Sometimes it's just explaining that this is what a notice means, and this is what the next step is for you in that scenario. And sometimes it's a situation where there shouldn't be a notice, or the notice is improper. But people assume because they've received it that they're, supposed to move out immediately. Well, that's what the courts are for. The courts determine that. And so what we're seeing are people who are receiving those notices and just need to know what's next. What should I expect? But we also see people who are being terminated prematurely, where leases are fully in place, but there's an opportunity to possibly have a higher rent, to be able to get more money for that same space.
That's what we see a lot here. People are calling saying the landlord wants to, tear down this house that I'm renting before my lease is up, and I'm sure the landlord can sell that property for a lot of money or rent it for more money. Yeah, I bet you see that a lot.
Absolutely. And a lot in those situations where sometimes we find it may be beneficial for that person to move, and that's ultimately their choice. But there are things you can negotiate for that. A lot of property owners will negotiate a cash for keys situation where they say, well, if you move and turn over the keys, then we will give you X amount of dollars to do that. And that may be something you want to negotiate. I mean, that may ultimately be of interest to you. But if you're in a situation, which unfortunately many are, where the property is your only home, you don't have anywhere else to go, and pursuant to your lease, you have at least another 3 months before that lease terminates. Well, that's where we have to have some discussions about the fact that you signed a contract that allows you to stay, and you're entitled to do so.
So you said this is an expansion of this program. Right now you have 2 attorneys that are devoted to this at Legal Aid Society. Is that in all of Middle Tennessee?
No.
That's in Davidson County?
That's strictly in Davidson and Williamson counties combined. We do have 8 offices across Middle Tennessee. We are Tennessee's largest nonprofit law firm. And through our 8 offices, we have attorney-tenant representatives in each of our offices, and they represent persons within their service area. However, like many nonprofits who are, trying to do this very important work, we're understaffed and over need. At the last census that we received, there's about 1 attorney for every 13,000 people who needed our assistance.
Wow.
We are chopping away at that number, hopefully, as we continue to lift people out of poverty. But we do the best we can, and we leverage the private bar. Those attorneys who function pro bono and said, hey, legal aid will help you out. I know I normally charge $400 an hour, but for legal aid, we will assist this person at no charge. And we are indebted to those law firms and attorneys who work with us to do that.
That's good to hear. So what is funding this? You're expanding from 2, you said, to 8? Or
we will go from 2 to 6 attorneys.
So 2 to 6.
Yeah.
So who's paying for that? How is that happening?
Sure. So this is the work of Councilwoman Zulfat Sarara, who worked very closely with myself and with Conexión Americas to be able to put forward a proposal to Metro Nashville, Davidson County government to say, hey, we believe in this as a tool in the toolbox to help address the need for affordable housing in our area. And through her shepherding through Metro, they passed a resolution that ultimately provided us with a $2.6 million grant to help push this initiative forward.
And how long will that fund the additional attorneys? This
will fund us for 2 years. The project start date, if you will, was July 1 in terms of when the contracts were signed, and ultimately gave us permission to start pushing forward on hiring and so forth. And it'll go through June 30th of 2024. But I will say that I'm very, very hopeful that we will be successful in showing the tremendous return on investment of something like this to the city, such that they'd be encouraged to continue to fund the work that we're doing.
Well, and so let me ask, I mean, that's very interesting. How does affordable housing is a huge issue. How does this help with affordable housing? So now there'll be attorneys that are with clients, low income rental clients. How will this have a direct positive impact on the affordable housing issue?
Sure. Well, the affordable housing is a big issue. I mean, it's a big issue, and to be honest with you, there is no single solution. It takes many different solutions to help address it. The best way to address affordable housing from our perspective is to keep people in their homes. The homes that they have are affordable for them. And so if we can maintain them in their home, that's one part of the problem that we're addressing. But obviously additional housing, and more resources are a part of that larger solution. And there are a lot of hands trying to work on that as well. But if we can keep those persons in their housing who are entitled to be there, that's absolutely a step in the right direction. And what that does when we are able to keep people in their homes, that reduces the work of the homeless shelters who are having to house people who no longer have homes. The homeless shelters and the emergency room are actually the largest two financial pulls on people who are homeless. And as you can imagine, it's not necessarily the physical that's driving the ER visits, it's the mental health.
Wow, that's very interesting. We have a few calls. I'm going to take a call here before we go to break. Let's go to Joy, who is on the line. Hello, Joy.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I have a quick question. Why don't we spend some of those billions of dollars that we are going to spend to go to the moon to take care of humans right here on Earth? The moon has no people living on it. This country, the economy, there are people who can't afford rent or food or health care. And we spend all those tax dollars to take a trip to the moon. Now, I'm not saying in the future that's not good, but I'm saying right now, fix America. Feed American people. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you. So now it's up to you to defend our space program. No, I'm just kidding. What I take from that is there's enormous need.
Absolutely.
So here's a caller who's saying there's enormous need. I'm stunned by what you said earlier. I think I'm getting this right. You have one attorney for every 13,000 people who need help.
Yeah.
So there's astonishing need. And so that caller is identifying one thing that is money is being spent on. I'm sure it can be talk. That's not what we're here to talk about. But I appreciate the caller's concern. There's enormous need. And what do you see? I mean, is that what you're seeing, and is it getting worse? Where are we now?
Yeah, no, the need is tremendous, and it has been. It's unfortunate that the state of our country is that if you cannot afford an attorney, you just don't get one. And a lot of times the work that we do is not always, litigating. It's not always in the courtroom, arguing a case, although we absolutely do that. But a lot of it is just articulating the concerns of our clients. I use the analogy, if you've ever called a, cable company or a phone company and just try to navigate just that and get someone to fully understand what you're trying to say, it can be challenging. And when you look at the demographics of a lot of our clients, it becomes even more challenging for them to articulate the points that persons like myself with graduate and law degrees have to try and articulate. But to the point that was being made, there is a lot of need. There's an absolute lot of need, and there is a lot of funding coming through right now, and it's up to all of us to speak and say to our representatives and persons who are in charge where we feel those dollars should go.
Let me take another call since we have one right here. We have Evelyn. Hello, Evelyn.
Yes, hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to get the attorney's take on, or her her information that she has on how the courts treat contracts. Do they favor the contract, or do they favor the company or the organization over what's in the contract? Because I've experienced situations where I had a contract with a company, say healthcare, and they break that contract, but I want to know what the courts, what their position is. Do they want to enforce those contracts? Are they on the side of the contract, or are they on the side of their organization or the business when when those contracts are in place?
Okay, that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's unfortunately a tough situation, and it even further reinforces the concept of having to go to court without an attorney. Vanderbilt recently did a study of our own eviction system in Davidson County to look into how many tenants were represented by counsel versus owners or landlords, and it found that I think the statistic was 96% of tenants were unrepresented. Were unrepresented in court versus the majority of landlords being represented. And the only point in saying that is just the imbalance of power. And so to go to the question that was being asked, if you are a lay person, a regular Joe going to court, you are expected, and the law states this, you are expected to know the law just as well as any lawyer. And the courts are expected to treat you as though you know the law. Obviously, that's a fiction. We know that you don't know the law, but that's how the courts are required to treat it. The courts are and are expected to be neutral on both sides. And so, you know, if there's a contract and if there is a binding, agreement between two parties, then the court will find in favor of whomever is correct, provided you know the legal nuances, the technicalities of the law. Where people lose in court is not because their case isn't valid. 9 times out of 10, it's very meritorious. The problem is you don't understand the technicalities. You don't know the filing deadlines. You don't know the fact that it has to be on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with 1-inch margins.
Well, that's disturbing, and I was disturbed by her question. Do courts recognize the contract, or are they more focused on the company? And I mean, I would think the obvious answer is, well, it should be the contract. But
Absolutely.
That's fascinating what you're saying. You may go in with a great case, but you don't know what's going on, and the other side has attorneys that do know what's going on, and you are going to lose.
And that's where a pilot project like the Eviction Right to Counsel comes in. Sometimes it's the fact that you weren't given proper notice. You were supposed to have 14-day notice. They gave you 3-day notice and have taken you to court. You could very well go to court and be evicted with the wrong notice. You did not have enough time because they didn't give you enough time, but you don't have anyone there who can articulate that to the court for you. And you will be evicted because you don't know the nuances of the law. That's what makes it so unfortunate when someone comes to court unrepresented.
And I would think a lot of landlords, and now you have a lot of corporate landlords, would know a lot of people that are getting evicted won't know the law and
Absolutely.
don't have representation.
Absolutely.
All right, we have to take a break. All right, we have to take a break. We'll come back, continue the discussion. If you want to call in, there's the number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. We'll be back right after this.